She walked into the Navy briefing room carrying a tray of coffee, just a quiet server no one paid attention to. But when the Admiral suddenly spoke her call sign, a name feared across oceans, the entire room fell silent. No one knew the woman they had ignored was the hero whose classified mission changed the course of a war. The fluorescent lights of Naval Base Clearwater buzzed faintly as morning fog curled low across the harbor. Inside the steel-walled briefing room, young officers shuffled into their chairs, each one fresh-faced, eager, and nervously buttoning their uniforms. They were about to receive intel on a classified mission, one rumored to be the most dangerous reconnaissance op of the year. But none of them noticed the small, quiet woman who stepped in behind them, carrying a tray of steaming coffee cups. Her name was Lena Brooks, or at least, that's what the base staff called her. She kept her shoulders low, her gaze lowered, and her pace steady. She placed the cups silently on the table, moving with the kind of precision people develop when they want to be invisible. She wasn't always invisible. Not long ago, she had been someone else entirely. Someone whose name once echoed through war rooms. Someone whose call sign had appeared on red-taped documents. Someone feared. Someone respected. Someone lost. But today she was just, the woman with the coffee tray. The young officers whispered, laughing about weekend plans, unaware of the scars she carried, not on her skin, but in the heaviness behind her eyes. As she set down the last cup, a photograph slid out from her sleeve, an old snapshot of a jet, a flight deck, and two pilots smiling under sunset light. She quickly pushed it back, thinking no one noticed. But someone had. Admiral Thorne stepped inside, broad-shouldered, face carved by years of ocean wind, and a gaze sharp enough to silence an entire ship. The room instantly snapped to attention. But the Admiral wasn't looking at the officers. He was looking at her. At Lena. His voice softened, just slightly. "Thank you," he said. She lowered her head. "Yes, sir." As she turned to leave, the Admiral took a step forward, studying her like a man searching the past. And then, he spoke. "Ghost Hawk. Is that really you?" The room froze. Chairs stopped creaking. Papers stopped rustling. Even the air seemed to stop. The officers stared at Lena, confused. Ghost Hawk. The Ghost Hawk? The legendary reconnaissance pilot who vanished 3 years ago? The one whose final mission remained classified? The one whose jet wreckage was never found? Lena's breath hitched. She closed her eyes, bracing for a past she had sworn she'd never face again. "Sir," she whispered, "I don't use that call sign anymore." But the Admiral's voice carried across the room like a wave. "You were the best pilot this Navy ever had. You don't get to disappear." For the first time, the young officers truly looked at her. Not as the woman who carried coffee, but as someone whose presence could shake an entire command room. Lena felt their eyes on her, but her mind was somewhere else, on the mission that changed her life. The one that made her leave the Navy. The one that still haunted her dreams. "Admiral, please," she murmured. "I'm not who I used to be." But Thorne shook his head. "You were a hero then. And you still are." A pin-drop silence filled the room. Because heroes don't just vanish. But they break. And Lena Brooks was living proof of that. The Admiral dismissed the young officers, but he didn't dismiss Lena. She stood by the wall, gripping the edge of the counter, her knuckles turning white. "Sit," the Admiral said gently. She hesitated, then obeyed. For a long moment, silence sat between them. Only the low hum of projectors filled the room. "You left without a word," Thorne finally said. "Not to me. Not to command. Not to anyone." Lena stared at her hands. "Because I failed." The Admiral frowned. "Failed who?" She swallowed hard. "Ethan." The Admiral's jaw tightened. Ethan Hale, her co-pilot, her closest friend, the man in the photograph, the man who never came back from that mission. Her voice trembled. We were flying low recon, enemy territory, you remember the orders. A pause. There was a radar spike. A missile lock. Ethan, he told me to eject, but I didn't want to leave him. I tried to save the jet. Her throat closed. I couldn't pull him out in time. Her eyes glistened with a pain she had carried alone for years. I lived, she whispered, but he didn't. And the Navy, the skies, none of it felt like mine anymore. She expected anger. Or disappointment. Or the cold formality of military response. Instead, the Admiral leaned forward. Lena, there's something you never knew. He opened a classified folder. Your flight data has been declassified. He slid the document toward her. Her hands shook as she read it. The truth hit her like a shockwave. Ethan, saved me? The Admiral nodded. He rerouted the controls, forcing your ejection sequence before the second missile hit. He sacrificed himself to keep you alive. Not because you failed. He paused. But because he believed the world still needed you. Tears rolled silently down her face. For years, she thought she lived because she wasn't good enough. Now she realized she lived because she was. The Admiral spoke again. Lena, the Navy needs instructors for the next Special Operations Flight Program. They need someone who understands fear, loss, and survival. Someone who teaches with heart, not ego. She wiped her tears. You want me to come back? I want Ghost Hawk to rise again, he said softly. In whatever way she chooses. Lena looked around the room, the same room where she once briefed missions as a decorated pilot, and where she had returned as a quiet coffee server hiding from her past. Maybe running wasn't the answer anymore. Maybe healing meant flying again. Not into war. But into purpose. She inhaled slowly. All right, she whispered. But I won't fly combat. You don't have to, the Admiral said. She stared at the photo in her hand, she and Ethan laughing on the flight deck, sunlight warm on their helmets. Then yes, she said, voice steady. I'll teach. Her past wouldn't define her. But it would guide her. And as she stood, shoulders straight, eyes clear, the Admiral gave her a small, proud smile. Welcome back, Ghost Hawk. This time, when the young officers saw her walk through the hallways, they didn't see a server. They saw a legend. A survivor. A teacher. And for the first time in years, Lena walked with the quiet confidence of a woman reclaiming her sky. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who have already fallen apart, and chose to stand again. Her uniform changed, her role changed, but her courage never left. Ghost Hawk didn't just return to the Navy, she returned to herself.